The reservation at Meridian was for 7 p.m. sharp, and I arrived precisely on time wearing a simple black dress I'd bought at Target 3 years ago. The five-star restaurant buzzed with the quiet conversations of the city's elite, crystal glasses clinking against fine china as servers glided between tables draped in crisp white linens. Mom's 58th birthday celebration was already in full swing when I reached our private dining room. The Williams family had gathered in all their designer glory: my parents, my older sister Jessica with her husband Mark, and my brother David with his fiancée Samantha. Everyone was dressed to impress, dripping in jewelry and wearing clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Elena, there you are," Mom said, barely looking up from her conversation with Jessica about some charity gala. "We already ordered appetizers." "Happy birthday, Mom," I said quietly, taking the empty seat at the far end of the table. "Thank you, dear." She turned back to Jessica without another glance. I'd driven here in my 8-year-old Honda Accord, parking it next to David's new Tesla and Jessica's Mercedes. The contrast wasn't lost on anyone, especially not my family, who'd made their opinions about my life choices abundantly clear over the past 6 years. To them, I was Elena Williams, the family disappointment who'd thrown away a promising career in corporate law to pursue what they called some ridiculous biotech fantasy. What they didn't know was that their delusional daughter had spent those 6 years building medtech innovations from a garage startup into a pharmaceutical powerhouse on the verge of the biggest deal in the industry. "So Elena," Mark said, swirling his expensive wine, "still working on your little science project?" "Something like that," I replied, taking a sip of water. "You know," Jessica chimed in, her diamond bracelet catching the candlelight, "Mark's firm is always looking for paralegals. The pay isn't amazing, but it's steady work. Better than whatever you're doing now." I nodded politely. I appreciate the thought. Dad, CEO of Williams Financial Group, looked at me with barely concealed disappointment. "Elena, you're 32 years old. When are you going to accept that this biotech dream isn't working out?" "It's working out fine, Dad." "Fine." Mom laughed, the sound sharp and condescending. "Sweetheart, you're still living in that tiny apartment, driving that embarrassing car, wearing clothes from discount stores. You're clearly still living paycheck to paycheck." The words stung, but I kept my expression neutral. They had no idea that the tiny apartment was actually a penthouse I owned outright, paid for with the profits from my company's early patents. The old car was a choice. I preferred investing money back into research and development rather than status symbols. "Elena's always been a dreamer," David said to Samantha, as if I wasn't sitting right there. "She thinks she's going to revolutionize medicine or something." "What exactly do you do again?" Samantha asked with polite interest. "I develop pharmaceutical technologies," I said simply. "Like what?" "Making vitamins." Mark snorted. "Something like that." The appetizers arrived, oysters and caviar that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. As the family discussed their latest acquisitions and investment portfolios, I listened quietly, thinking about the phone call I'd been expecting all day. For the past 3 years, MedTech Innovations had been developing a revolutionary cancer treatment protocol that used targeted gene therapy to attack specific tumor types. The FDA trials had been extraordinarily successful, with remission rates that shattered every previous record. What made the technology truly groundbreaking was its precision. Instead of the scorched earth approach of traditional chemotherapy, our treatment could target cancer cells with surgical accuracy while leaving healthy tissue completely untouched. We'd essentially solved one of medicine's greatest challenges. 3 months ago, pharmaceutical giant Novartis Corp had approached us about licensing the technology. The negotiations had been intense, with their team of lawyers and executives trying to understand how a small biotech company had managed to achieve what their billion-dollar research divisions couldn't. "Elena, are you even listening?" Mom's voice cut through my thoughts. "Sorry, what?" "Jessica was telling us about their new house in the Hamptons. The one that cost $2.5 million. "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "Meanwhile," Mom continued, "you're still renting that studio apartment and taking the bus to work." I actually owned a Tesla Model S, but I'd been taking public transportation lately to avoid the inevitable questions about how I could afford such an expensive car. The less my family knew about my actual financial situation, the easier it was to focus on my work without their interference. "Mom, can we not do this tonight?" I asked gently. "Do what?" Express concern for my daughter who's wasting her life. I'm not wasting my life. Really? Then show me your bank account. Show me your investment portfolio. Show me anything that proves you're not just barely scraping by. The conversation had taken a familiar turn. Every family gathering became an intervention about my failed career choices. They genuinely believed they were helping, that tough love would eventually force me to abandon my unrealistic dreams and accept a traditional job. I'm doing fine financially, I said quietly. Fine. Dad leaned forward. Elena, fine doesn't cut it anymore. You're in your 30s with no savings, no property, no real career prospects. This biotech thing has been going on for 6 years with nothing to show for it. Actually, there's quite a lot to show for it. Like what? Jessica challenged. Have you made even $1 from these inventions of yours? Before I could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Sarah Chin Assistant, and my heart rate immediately spiked. Sarah only called during family events if something absolutely critical was happening. Excuse me, I said, reaching for my phone. Oh, let it go to voicemail, Mom said dismissively. We're having a family discussion. The phone kept ringing. This was the call I'd been waiting for all week. The final confirmation from Novartis Corp about the licensing deal that would change everything. I should take this. It might be important. More important than your mother's birthday? Dad asked, his voice stern. The phone rang again. Sarah never called twice unless it was urgent. I'm sorry, but I really need to answer this. I swiped to accept the call, but as I brought the phone to my ear, Mom's voice cut through the air. Elena Williams, you put that phone down right now. This is exactly what I'm talking about. No respect, no priorities, no understanding of what's important. The frustration of 6 years of dismissal and condescension suddenly boiled over. Instead of stepping away to take the call privately, I pressed the speaker button and set the phone on the table. Ms. Williams. Sarah's voice filled the private dining room, clear and professional. Yes, Sarah. I'm calling with the final confirmation from Novartis Corporation. The pharmaceutical licensing deal is officially confirmed. The table went silent. Even the server who'd been approaching with the next course stopped in his tracks. The $89 million deal? I asked, my voice steady despite the racing of my heart. Confirmed. $89 million for the exclusive licensing rights to the MedTech cancer protocol, plus 15% royalties on all future sales. The contracts are ready for your signature. Mom's wine glass hovered halfway to her lips, frozen in shock. And the projection estimates? I continued. Conservative estimates suggest the royalties could generate between $200 and $300 million annually within 5 years, based on the treatment's success rates and market potential. David's fork clattered against his plate. What about the FDA approval timeline? Fast-tracked due to the exceptional trial results. Novartis expects to begin mass production within 18 months. Dr. Peterson from Johns Hopkins called personally to congratulate you on what he called the most significant advancement in cancer treatment in decades. The silence in the room was deafening. Jessica's mouth hung open, her expensive lipstick failing to conceal her shock. Thank you, Sarah. Please schedule a meeting with the legal team for Monday morning. We'll need to review the final contract details. Of course, Ms. Williams. Also, Forbes magazine called about scheduling an interview for their upcoming feature on biotech innovators. Should I confirm? Let's discuss that later. Anything else urgent? The university called about endowing the research chair we discussed. They're very excited about the $50 million contribution to the cancer research program. Dad's face had gone completely pale. Schedule that meeting for next week as well. Thank you, Sarah. Congratulations again, Ms. Williams. You've changed the world. I ended the call and looked around the table at my family's stunned faces. Elena, Mom whispered, did she just say $89 million? The licensing fee for one of my patents, yes. Your patents? Mark asked, his voice barely audible. I hold 17 patents in gene therapy and targeted cancer treatment. The one Novartis just licensed is projected to help over 1 million patients annually. Jessica found her voice first. You're a millionaire? Actually, with the existing patent royalties and the company valuation, the number is significantly higher than that. Dad leaned back in his chair looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Elena, how is this possible? 6 years of 18-hour days, Dad. 6 years of research, development, clinical trials, and FDA approvals while you all assumed I was failing. But you never said anything, Mom protested. You never asked about the actual work. You only cared that I wasn't following the traditional path you'd mapped out for me. We thought you were struggling, David said weakly. I was struggling. I was working harder than I'd ever worked in my life, trying to solve medical problems that have plagued humanity for generations. But you saw the old car and the simple clothes and assumed failure. Why didn't you tell us about the patents? The company? Jessica asked. Because every conversation became a lecture about my poor life choices. It was easier to let you believe what you wanted to believe while I focused on the work. Mom set down her wine glass with a shaking hand. Elena, sweetheart, we had no idea. No, you didn't. Because you never bothered to learn what I was actually doing. But the apartment, the car. The apartment is a penthouse I own outright. The car runs perfectly fine. I prefer spending money on equipment and research rather than impressing people. The server finally approached, clearly uncertain whether to interrupt. Excuse me, would you like me to bring the next course? Actually, I said, standing up, I think I'll skip dinner. Elena, please don't leave, Dad said, his voice cracking. We need to talk about this. Do we? 6 years of dismissing my work and now suddenly you want to talk because there's money involved. That's not fair, Mom said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Isn't it? 5 minutes ago you were lecturing me about living paycheck to paycheck. Now you want to have a heart-to-heart because you discovered I'm successful. I picked up my simple black purse, which, coincidentally, contained more money in credit cards than most people saw in a year. Elena, we're proud of you, Jessica said desperately. Are you proud of the work? The patients whose lives will be saved? The advancement of medical science? Or are you proud of the dollar amount? The question hung in the air unanswered. For 6 years I've been developing treatments that will help children with leukemia live normal lives. I've created therapies that will give parents more time with their kids, that will turn terminal diagnoses into treatable conditions. But none of that mattered to you until you heard the price tag. Elena, please, Dad pleaded. I'm going home. Happy birthday, Mom. As I walked toward the door, Mom called out, Elena, wait. I turned back one final time. The money. Does this mean you're really okay? Financially, I mean. I smiled sadly. Mom, I just turned down a $200 million buyout offer last month because I believe keeping the company independent will help more patients in the long run. David's jaw dropped. You turned down $200 million? Because it wasn't about the money, David. It never was. Then what was it about? Saving lives. Which is what I told you 6 years ago when I started this company. I left the restaurant and walked to my Honda Accord, which I'd drive home to my penthouse to continue working on the next breakthrough that my family would inevitably dismiss until they heard the valuation. As I pulled out of the parking garage, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. We love you and we're sorry. Can we start over? I smiled, typing back, I love you too. But next time maybe ask about the work before assuming it's worthless. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong about your success. Sometimes it's proving them wrong about what success actually means.